bonus content on the Locked On Celtics podcast. If you were listening to the podcast, the Thursday podcast, you know that I had Keith Smith from Spot Track on the show to explain what the Celtics are doing in the in the short term. If you missed it, who they might sign, upgrading a two-way guy or two-way guys. Check that out. It's on this feed, whether you're listening or you're watching. If you're new, if this is your first exposure to the Locked On Celtics podcast, I'm John Karalis. I'm a beat writer covering the Celtics for Celtics on SI at Sports Illustrated. And I host this show on a daily basis. It's normally a half-hour podcast, usually a little bit more than a half hour. That's available everywhere, so make sure you're subscribed everywhere. But for this purpose, I got Keith. I've kidnapped him. I've tied him to his chair, and we're going to talk for another 10 or 15 minutes or whatever it is, as we because I wanted to throw some other things out at you here. The potential for, because the Celtics are not going to go above the first apron next year at all. At no, even if they decide to pay the tax. Now, they could decide to pay the tax depending on how the season is going. They may go into it thinking we're not going to pay the tax, and then the season could dictate like we need to spend more money, and because now we're in the Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, the just win at all costs kind of phase of the Celtics. We're starting to creep into the phase of where Milwaukee was just doing things. You're like, ooh, boy, I wonder why they're doing that. And it's very much to keep Giannis happy, to push that window open as long as it can. I think we're going to start entering that phase pretty soon. So I agree with every point you made in the podcast about they're not going to pay the tax. They probably don't want to pay the tax. And one of the keys is Vooch being good enough and being willing to take whatever less. I still think it'll be a low number. I think when we look at if Vooch signs and sticks around, I honestly, I think it's going to be a single digit million number.
It may be.
But your point is well taken. I could be wrong. That would allow the Celtics a little bit of leeway. A sign and trade is possible because they have the traded player exception. And if they use their mid-level, anything above the taxpayer, anything above like $6 million, right? They'll be hard capped because that's considered using
correct
the full mid-level, right? You give
anything above $6 million or longer than 2 years out of that exception.
So if they're already going to be hard capped at their first apron, sign and trade, let's do it, right?
Yeah,
you can start. So even if let's just say the Vucevic thing doesn't work, you can go sign and trade for somebody. One of the guys that you mentioned on the podcast is a potential. You could say, hey, we'll sign and trade for you. We'll give you the mid-level money that other teams are offering you. We'll just sign and you do the sign and trade, and then you still have your mid-level exception to give to an Anfernee Simons or somebody else. You could basically sign two mid-level guys.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, and that trade exception, just in case people are, kind of like, what is the deal? It's $27.7 million. It was the full amount of Simon's salary and this is why creating the trade exception in the Porzingis trade mattered so much, because that's how they were able to acquire Vooch. I know, yes, and for 99% of people, it doesn't matter. Vooch for Simons was the trade. But Vooch went into the Porzingis trade exception, which means the Celtics technically took nothing back for Simons. Right. That's how you create the big giant trade exception for Simons. They also have the $8.2 million one for George Niang that's still hanging out there. So they're sitting in pretty good shape as far as that. Now, here's where it wouldn't be me if I didn't do it. Can't combine trade exceptions with other trade exceptions. Can't combine them with outgoing salary. So they couldn't like say, hey, the Niang exception and the Simons exception, let's bring in a $35 million guy.
Yeah.
This will be great. It's going to be, I was explaining this to someone the other day because they're like, well, they're going to end up right back in second apron problems and all this. The only way that could even really happen is if they said, hey, Vooch, we loved you so much. Here's a $30 million contract.
Yeah, right.
And that's not going to be a thing. Unless Vooch all of a sudden turns into prime Bill Russell on defense and prime Wilt Chamberlain on offense the rest of the season, and they sweep their way to a title. At that point, it'd be pay them whatever you need to. I don't really care. But that's not going to happen. They're not going to pay them that much. So how they got themselves there previously was acquiring. It was, we're going to send out 25 million. We're going to bring back 35 million. We're going to send out 20 million. We're going to bring back 28 million. Those were the kind of things that they did to build up. Then they had to kind of shed that out this year. So now they're in a spot where, that's why I brought up 27 million under the first apron. That is truly your kind of quote unquote, that's it. That's your spending marker there. I don't even think they're going to go that high. Because the other important thing to note with the tax, they're 18.4 million under the tax. Let's just say they invest 20 million in signings this summer. That's fine. You can be over the tax just like they were this year. And then at the trade deadline, it's somebody's got to go, right? And it may be, hey, player X, now one of the younger guys has replaced you. Or one of the younger guys, you didn't really pop the way we wanted. Or a veteran player Y that we signed, it's not really working out. We're going to move away from you. And that it only really matters that you get under the tax by the trade deadline. After that, it gets real wonky and hard to try to pull it off. But as long as you do it by the time you get there, that's fine. So I think there's a good chance they'll be in the tax when the season starts, but it won't be by so much that it's like, oh no, how do we get out without giving up players we really, really like?
Right. It's going to be an interesting kind of mix because the other possibility is that they don't use the traded player exception this summer, that they just do salary. They could still trade. They have salaries to trade, and I don't want to think about who might go out to bring in an expensive player, because then you're talking about players that we like, and I don't know if how willing they are to do that. But
I think sorry to interrupt you, John, but
no,
I think when we were in season and there was a lot of, they're within this amount, they'll just dump Hauser to get out of the tax. I think they showed if they're a regular every night rotation guy, they're not just going to move you for simply tax reasons. If it is a added benefit like Simons for Vooch of saved enough money there, and we got back another every night rotation guy, then I think that's on the table. But when you start talking Hauser, who makes under $11 million next year, your savings are going to be so minimal that it's like you're not just going to get rid of them. I know Pistons fans for months were like, we have a big enough TPE, just put him in that. Like, it's done. It's so easy. And it's like, but you're going to have to give up something real to get him. They like him. He starts regularly this year. He's been playing, pretty well for them for a number of years now. He's a rotation guy on a championship level team. Like, they're not just going to throw guys away just to get under. Even their deals in the summertime weren't deals that were just got to get out of it, other than Porzingis kind of turned into that a little bit. But that, again, they got the TPE out of that. They made a couple other moves to kind of maneuver things around. So it's going to be, I'm with you. And I would, the other thing is, let's say Vooch plays well enough that he draws enough interest. The Celtics have shown a very big willingness to do outgoing sign-in trades over the years. They did it with Gordon Hayward. They did it with Evan Fournier. They will do that even if it's just for a traded player exception, which would, again, let's just say somebody's like, man, Vooch was great. We're going to give him $18 million next year. Celtics like, too rich for our blood. Wouldn't be surprised if they're like, hey, here's a second, turn it into a sign and trade instead. If you're going to do it anyway, let's do it that way. Or it may be, hey, wait a minute, maybe we can get a guy back. with this. It's that they've got between Vooch himself, the player, Vooch's bird rights for salary reasons and a sign and trade, the big traded player exception, and the non-taxpayer mid-level. They have enough to add or re-sign and add a couple of rotation guys for sure.
Today's show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Welcome to the 5 Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take the top spot. 5 Hour Energy has a wide variety of flavors and something for everyone. So let's take a look at some of these flavors. Which one's going to be my top pick? You have cotton candy, a delicious swirl of sugary clouds, a fruity twist, a hint of vanilla. It's a light, airy candy profile, pure sweetness from start to finish. It's a sweet tooth fix, no sugar guilt, which is very strong. Fruity Rainbow, another strong candidate, bright blend of assorted fruit candy flavors, a sweet layered fruit note in every sip, nostalgic candy bag flavor, and again, no sugar. And the Concord grape flavor, similar to grape juice or candy, soft rounded sweetness, consistent, straightforward taste, classic purple candy style finish. And you know what? That is going to be my number one pick. I love grape. I love purple. And that smooth, almost syrupy like fruit profile just reminds me of my childhood. But I get that bit of caffeine, that boost. And so I'm going to go with grape, but some of these others that are real sleepers, the cotton candy could be a real sleeper there too. Find your new favorite flavor at 5 Hour Energy Shots, available at 5hourenergy.com, 5 Hour Energy, the number 5, 5hourenergy.com, or on Amazon. Thanks for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Check out Locked On NBA, Locked On NBA Game Nights. They are covering the league. Games are going to be back, and so Game Night has every game covered. Locked On NBA has all the big stories, all the big storylines covered. So check those out wherever you get your podcast. All right, so Brad Stevens and his crew, I'm sure they have, like, if any of them listen, I wonder how much of a chuckle they get. That when you hear these conversations, they're like, "Oh, that's so cute. You guys get like 10% of what we're trying to do."
Yeah.
I feel like we have such a grasp on things, and we're looking at all these permutations. And like, if you're to talk to one of them, they'd be like, yeah, sure. But also blah, 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 blah. And you're like, oh, sure. Yeah, that's also possible. That could be a way to go too. And they just have such a mastery of everything. And I'm going to say this kind of like in the same loving way that you called yourself a soulless transaction robot. They are, in a way, soulless transaction robots themselves, in that they know everybody's value. And Brad is willing to have that hard conversation with somebody. Like, Anfernee Simons got traded and turned around and was like, yeah, no, Brad was great. Everything was, love that guy. Drew Holiday was traded and was like, yeah, Brad kind of filled me in on everything and nothing was a surprise. And yeah, it's all fine. Like, they, I think, handle themselves in such a way that they know just from top to bottom, right? Jayson Tatum, is there a price for that we would turn and get rid of? Like, what would we trade Jayson Tatum for? And the answer is probably maybe nobody, or 1, 2, 3, like that would be it. But they have, I know that they know what each guy is worth, what Jaylen is worth, what Derek White is worth. And not that they're going to go out there and actively shop, but you never know what another front office is going to do. Nico Harrison proved that. And you just don't know when some front office is going to call you with, hey, I've got Luka Doncic. You're the only team I'm talking to. Or we're giving you first crack. And you can't be scrambling at that time. You know what, if it was Luka, or if it's Cooper Flag, or if it's whomever, when that guy comes across your desk, when that name is there for you for the taking, you're like, okay, this is how far we're willing to go. And because Brad's willing to have the uncomfortable conversations, anything is at play. Anything is possible, copyright Kevin Garnett. That's so we're just scratching the surface on, we're doing what we think might happen, but what they're willing to do, I feel like goes beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we also we start to operate under, well, they're not going to go above this number and these kind of things. And the only people who actually know what those limits are Brad Stevens and his staff and the ownership. Yeah. Right? Those are the ones who set those markers. If the ownership is like, actually, we don't really care about resetting the repeater tax, just go, then they'll go. And it was right here on this show. I ripped them really hard a couple years ago when I was like, if you do another tax avoidance move with this team that is really good and ready to go for it, like you deserve every bit of criticism. In that year, they didn't. They said, no, this is an ad year. We're going to pay the tax. We're going to add guys. I think that was in 2022 when they made the finals and didn't win. But then it was, okay, we're now here's where we live, right? We now live here, and this is the expectation. But in a year where it is, yeah, we can kind of avoid the tax. And that's the other thing when people are like, oh, they're so cheap. Were you thinking any of the guys who went, other than the Simons for Vucevic trade, which I'm open-minded about it, but I want to see it play out. Was anybody, none of those guys, Brad Stevens said it himself. They loved all those guys, but they weren't rotation players.
Right.
None of them was a rotation player. There was, and this is where it gets very soulless, right? When you say things like there was nothing lost there. Because that's not true, right? Xavier Tillman was a very popular guy in the locker room, beloved teammate. So there were things lost. But as far as that's where now I've gotten better about saying there is no on-court production lost in those moves. You're not seeing it, it's not like, man, now we got to replace 10 points per game off the bench or anything like that. I will also say with Brad Stevens, and I've thought this for a long time, this is where I think he's done a really good job of bridging the gap between GM, for lack of a better term, right? Because that's just the one I like to use. GM and coach of, hey, I don't need to be, right, like Brad Pitt playing Billy Bean in Moneyball. Like, I can't be friends with these guys. I might have to cut them. I might have to trade them. I think Brad is still, at heart, he's still a coach, right? And I think he always will be. And he's like, hey, it's not easy. But there's a way you can do this where you treat these guys with decency. You walk them through the process. You work with them, because I also think he's got to probably have in the back of his mind, his first year with the Celtics, Danny Ainge he did 5 trades in 10 days, including trading for guys. They play a game and then trading them again, a game later. They traded Austin Rivers, and that just so that they were like, you can't have him, Doc, unless you give us something real for him, give us a pick, right? There was a lot of crazy stuff going on that year, which ultimately culminated with a buzzer beater trade, at least the way it was reported, where it was like Boston's doing this deal and they're also getting tossed Isaiah Thomas in the deal, which worked out okay, which then I got to believe for Brad too also led to, man, the way things went down with IT probably didn't sit right with him, right? As I'm the guy who was with him every single day in the locker room. Watched him get hurt. I watched him go everything he went through. And I think that's why it probably was, without needing to be said, under me, it's not going to be soulless transaction robot. It will be for math, but we are going to treat them like human beings. Yes. We're going to work with guys. And that's how you get guys to get traded and then literally say, man, I loved it there and they were great to me. And I would come back, right? Because that's where you want to be, where for a little while there it was starting to look like they might have a little bit of trouble. They're just, up and moving everybody and all these things. I mean, for a little while there, they openly were like, yeah, we talked about under the former front office, talked about maybe we need to move Gordon Hayward. And it's like the dude who's leg snapped in half. Like, where does it end? And I mean, there is something to being ruthless. Get it, but I think you can still do ruthless moves without being a ruthless person. You can still, take the individuals into account. And I think that's important that we talk about it at least every once in a while, because these are people. They're not 2K players. They're not lines on my spreadsheet that I just move from one team to another. Like, these are real people, and all this stuff really does matter.
It's true. It's 100% true. They do thread that needle very, very nicely. Today's show is brought to you by Quo. It's a new year, and you got new systems, and this is the time where you look at everything and say, there's got to be a better way. Look at this mess. Kind of what NBA teams are doing. Streamlining your communications for you is one of the quickest upgrades that you can make. It's not a player, but you can do it with Quo, spelled Q-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. That's the most important thing, connecting with your customers and being on the same page. Your whole team can talk and text from one shared business number. Nothing gets missed. They all see the full conversation thread, so they're all on the same page. It makes replies faster and more personal and more accurate. And it all works from your phone or your computer. You can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's show is also brought to you by Indeed. Sponsored jobs, workplace chaos, deadlines are stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting there, and you've got the pressure on you, a stack of resumes. No, what you need is Indeed sponsored jobs, because that helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. You're not just hoping that the right candidate is in that pile and stumbles across your post. You want to be targeted. In the minute that I'm talking to you, companies like yours are going to make 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. If you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing the candidates who actually check off all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Go to Indeed sponsored jobs, Indeed.com/podcast. You will get $75 in a sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. Indeed.com/podcast, and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. You are an everydayer with me every Monday through Friday. Now join the Everydayer Club. It is free. It's $5 a month for ad-free audio, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every major podcasting app. You get access to the Everydayer Club Discord server, group chat for Locked On Celtics for NBA listeners, all of that, plus a whole lot more. It's $5 a month, $50 for the year at lockedonceltics.supercast.com, lockedonceltics.supercast.com. One last thing I want to bring up is the Celtics are under the tax this year. That means they get a tax payment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Do you know what that money is going to be? Do you have
It's not as much as it would have been with all the teams that kind of cut money, Celtics included. I think it was set to be about 11 or 12 million per non-tax paying team. Where's it going to get? I think that's down now to like 8 or 9 million each.
Okay. So, but the Celtics have gotten themselves to a point where they're not only not paying the tax, they'll get $8 or $9 million that they can bank. And so that is not nothing. And I'm sure there's a bank account somewhere where the Celtics have reserves where when they need to pay something, they can pay something. that $8 or $9 million, when you talk about what they're paying out and everything next year, that factors into that equation somehow. So no one is talking about the fact that they're going to get a payout from this, because they're under the tax.
Yeah.
That is something that we need to consider, that if they offer Vooch $8 million, you'd be like, well, this covers that $8 million. And so, whatever, like, all I'm saying is that's not how it works. But what I'm saying is money coming in like that is helpful when you talk about maybe they'll pay the tax for a little bit, and that mitigates whatever they might end up doing next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, yeah, if we that check gets cut at the end of the league year, and then if 2 weeks later video surfaces of Bill Chisholm Scrooge McDucking it into a pool full of coins, I'm gonna be like, hey, what are we doing here, right? But but as long as it turns out to be, hey, down the line, in Brad being the front office member who speaks with the media has kind of hit on that at times, where it's been like, hey, we have every bit of faith that when we need to spend money, they will because essentially what you almost kind of do is you take this 8-9 million, and I apologize if that's not the right number. I'd have to actually do the math on that, but let's say it is. You take that 8-9 million, what you're almost kind of doing is go put it in a escrow account and build up a little bit of money off of it. Then when 2 years from now, the team is like, hey, we got to re-sign Payton Pritchard, and Derek White's do a new deal, and we've got, player X, Y, and Z coming off their rookie contracts and we want to re-sign. So we want to go into the tax again. Okay, great. So now that 8-9 million, maybe that's 10-11 million. 10-11 million enough? Sure. Yeah, we think that's far where we're going. They're not going back into, $500 million. That's probably not going to happen, I'm going to guess, again, unless all of a sudden it turns into, oh man, Hugo Gonzalez, Payton Pritchard, and whoever they draft with this year's pick they're all as good as Tatum and Brown, and now we need to pay all of them $30 million. That's the only way you start building those types of numbers up there. That's probably not going to be something we see again for a long time. And if you do, you'll live there for a little bit, then you'll come out of there, and then you'll kind of go through this cycle again. That's, but it's the big thing is when you have a title contender that you don't start getting cheap on, we had to let Payton Pritchard go because we didn't want to pay an $8 million tax bill, on top of, re-signing him. That's where then, people have a right to be like, what are we doing? Trying to win? Or are we trying to just, run the business for profit here? And that's where it gets, questionable. But I think they're very well set up right now. I think they're very well set up for the next offseason. And then it becomes, as I think we learned here, is they're probably going to do pretty good with the roster build. And even if things don't necessarily always make sense right away, that's why I'm so open-minded on the Vooch for Simons swap. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. Maybe it's, something different. And I just thought, and I was not big on Kata coming in. I was like, this is going to be a mess. And, he's proven me completely wrong. He's been fine. Better than fine. He's been good as a starting center. So I think they're set up pretty well for this. And now, I mean, the nerd in me gets really excited to be like, how are we going to do all this math and fit all these deals? And that's what I can't wait to see.
I'm so thankful for people like you who are excited to do math, because the people like me and the regular listeners, you everydayers, have heard me try to do math on the fly on this podcast. And it's not gone well. It has not gone well. It's been comical. I hate math. It's my enemy, my mortal sworn enemy. Me and words, boom. I got words locked down. Math, no good.
John, did you watch The Office? Were you an Office guy?
Yes.
So when they are on the work bus and Kevin's like doing the math in his head of how fast they'll have to drive or they won't get pies. And then Oscar is like, what is 397,000 pies divided by 25 pies? And Kevin just gives him the answer. That's me with the salary cap. I can do math there. You start asking me other math, and I'm like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it doesn't work, right? Just like Kevin with, well, salads doesn't work because it's not the same, right? It's got to be
But the
pies.
pies,
Yeah.
you know what, on top of, I do not have an acumen for the math. I spent many, many years working in television and doing math in my head in terms of time. So I had a 30-second story and a 45-second story, and that's a minute 15. But 30 plus 45 is 75. And I have gotten myself into so much, I've finally gotten myself out of the habit. I'd gotten myself into so much trouble counting in increments of 60 because of time, where something was 59 cents and then all of a sudden it became $1.02. Well, you know what I mean? Like after 60 cents, it became $1. And I was like, wait, no, that's not right. Because I could do the math with the time in my head, like super fast, because I was producing shows and I'm going, okay, that's 15, that's 30, 45. This is okay. This is a minute 15, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, I'm 25 over. I need to cut the, and I could do all of that stuff in a hurry. But then I took that 60-second increments into real world, and it already took my fuzzy math brain and it just threw it into a blender. And I don't know if I've ever really truly recovered. So anyway.
Yeah, when I worked for Disney for a very long time, 2 decades, part of one of the jobs I had was my team did all the schedules for people. So like, you imagine there's 80,000 people work at the property, and so they, if it's, how do you guys schedule the number of popcorn vendors to have on Main Street USA? Well, there's all this stuff that goes into it, and all this really complex math and studies, and including like people walk this far for popcorn, but they'll only walk this far for water and all kinds of stuff. So there's all these things. But part of it was the schedules were done at the 15-minute level. So like you started at 7:15, 7. It took me years to get out of that like way of thinking and doing everything in terms of, well, 8.75 hours. And people were like, what is 8.75 hours? Like, what is that? It's not even a measure of anything. That's not a measure of time. And I'm like, well, that's 8 hours and 45 minutes. And like, that is it really? I guess maybe kind of, I'd be like, yeah, that's just kind of how we did it. So yeah, I'm with you on, my brain only works in certain ways. And then, but there's other things where it's like if my daughter asks me to help her with her math homework tonight, I'm gonna be like, all right, let's go to the Google machine, because I have no idea. Or we have a dot over there in the corner. Ask her for help, and she'll probably walk you through it better than I can. Or better yet, you have teachers for this. Go learn from them.
Oh God. Well, you're the teacher here. And I appreciate it. We've done 2 podcasts, basically. The bonus podcast is another full podcast at this point. So
that's how it goes. You wind me up and let me go.
I love it. I love it. Keith, thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody here. Bonus podcast here. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And once again, share the podcast. Tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.